The New York Giants need a win in Dallas this weekend. And here's what they can do to achieve that. Locked on Giants starts right now.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI, which is where you can find all of my written work. And as always, we welcome on in our Blue Crew community members, our everydayers, our newcomers, and everybody else in between. And we thank you for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And if you have made us your first listen of the day, we appreciate that as well. So thank you. And today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, Giant fans, it's time to take a detailed look at what the New York Giants need to do to avoid an 0-2 start, which if they have it happen, it'll be their third one in a row, and I believe their fourth one in the last five seasons. So we don't want to see that. Now, obviously, some of you are saying, well, it's simple, Pat. All they've got to do is they've got to outscore Dallas. Okay, yeah, true. But how do they get to that point? That's what we're going to talk about on today's show. We're going to start off with a trend with Dallas and how the Giants could potentially beat that trend. All right, this has to do with the Giants offense versus the Cowboys defense. Then we are going to take a look at the slot cornerbacks position and why the injury to Deron Bland could be a big one for the Giants, big and favor them. All right, and then we will finish things up by taking a look at how the Giants potentially can solve the dilemma of filling Micah McFadden's spot. Micah McFadden placed on IR on Thursday with the season-ending foot injury, or what they believe is a season-ending foot injury. All right, let's kick things off with a look at what we call in the zone. Now, if you go and you look at what Dallas's defense has done in week one, and you look at the history of Matt Alberfuss, who is the defensive coordinator for the Cowboys. Alberfuss has been a zone-heavy defensive coordinator in his time. He ran primarily zone in Chicago, and you know what? In his week one game against the Eagles, he ran a lot of zones. So I have some numbers for you. Dallas played zone against the Eagles on 82.6% of their coverage snaps. All right. That's just what Matt Alberfuss does. Now, according to True Media, the Cowboys gave up 144 yards passing, which is an average of 6.6 yards per pass play on zone plays. All right. So keeping that in mind, we probably can expect to see a lot of zone coverage from the Cowboys defense because that's, like I said, in Elberfluss's DNA. So let's take a look at what the Giants receivers have done against zone coverage. Now, we have a small sample size because it's just the one game. You know, I didn't go back and I didn't look at history because, you know, it's a new season, new everything. All right. So I looked at man coverage and zone coverage. And collectively, the Giants receivers in man coverage caught 6 out of 10 passes for 67 of the yards and 11.2 yards per average, 33 yards after the catch. In zone coverage, when they faced zone coverage, they caught 11 of 18 passes for 101 yards, a 9.2 average, 51 yards after the catch, and they had one drop. And of course, no touchdowns. We know the Giants didn't score touchdowns. So breaking that down, let's take a look at what Malik Neighbors did, what Wan'Dale Robinson did, because they were the two most frequently targeted receivers from the Giants. And I'm also going to throw in Theo Johnson when we get to zone. So let's start off with Malik. Malik Neighbors versus zone coverage last week caught 1 of 5 passes for 16 yards, 3 yards after the catch. In man coverage, Malik Neighbors caught 4 out of 5 catches, 4 out of 5 pass targets, for 55 out of his 71 yards, 21 yards out of the catch. So Malik was a little bit better man coverage. Wan'Dale Robinson against man coverage caught 2 out of 3 pass targets for 12 yards out of his 55, 21 yards after the catch. Versus zone, he was 4 of 4 for 43 yards and 22 yards after the catch. Now, these numbers might suggest that Wan'Dale Robinson, who, by the way, is on the injury report this week with an ankle issue, but he should be fine for Sunday, that he'll probably be heavily targeted against this Cowboys defense. But with Malik Neighbors, don't count him out. They're going to feed him. And I'm actually going to get into in the next segment how I think they're going to feed him, what role they're going to have in store for him, just based, again, on the numbers and how everything lines up. Now, I just want to quick mention Theo Johnson, tight end Theo Johnson, and how he did last week in zone coverage. He didn't have any man coverage snaps, but he had two pass targets against zone, caught 1 of 2 for 5 yards, 6 yards after the catch. Theo Johnson, ladies and gentlemen, needs to be a little bit better. Little too inconsistent last week. So I think if they can get him going this week against zone coverage, let him find the soft spots in the zone. If they can get, Wan'Dale Robinson and Malik Neighbors going against zone coverage, if that's what they are indeed are going to face, I think the Giants can move the ball via the air. Now, obviously, you're going to say, well, don't they have to run the ball first? Yes, they do. They have to use the running game to set up the pass. And what we saw last week, the Giants kind of abandoned the run game a little too soon, in my opinion. All right. The game wasn't really out of control until really the fourth quarter. That's when it kind of blew, the score kind of was blown open. So I would like to see the Giants maybe stick with the run a little bit more to set up the pass. It just seems like with this offense, they reverse it. They use the pass and, we'll throw in a run here and there. And I'm hoping, especially against a watered-down Dallas defense, which no longer has Micah Parsons, I am hoping that won't be the case, that we'll see more of a balance, especially if the game is kept close. All right, Giant fans, coming up next, I mentioned Malik Neighbors, but I want to talk about the big injury issue for the Dallas Cowboys, and that is cornerback DaRon Bland, and why he might not play and why that can potentially benefit the Giants, how they can exploit that. That's coming up right after this. Hey, Giant fans, it's almost the weekend, and it's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks that save you more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. So let's break it down. For the New York Giants, it was a disappointing week 1 showing, but outside linebacker Brian Burns came to play, finishing with 6 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss, and 2 quarterback hits. And just like Brian Burns delivered for the Giants defense, DoorDash delivers for you for your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order. Stack it all up all season long, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday and keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period ends November 18th. Hey, Giant fans, the NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure that you are ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to Locked On Giants. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. And don't forget, check out the all-new Giants Squad show hosted by Jay Berman. It features former Giants cornerback Mark Collins. And the Thursday show, I'm on the panel. And we're also on Sunday after the game. Brandon Olson pinch hits for me because I'm doing post-game stuff. So check that out. It's available on the YouTube channel. It's also available on our audio platforms. All right. In this segment, we're going to talk about a key injury for the Dallas Cowboys, and that is cornerback DaRon Bland. Now, against the Eagles, DaRon Bland played 100% of the snaps, right? He's versatile. He plays outside and in the slot. He had 26 of his snaps last week outside, 24 were in the slot. But DaRon Bland suffered a foot injury, did not practice on Wednesday, did not practice Thursday, and it's not looking good for him for Sunday. So let's first talk about how the Cowboys are potentially going to replace him. Trevon Diggs, who is coming back off of an injury himself, will probably play outside, opposite of Khair Alam. All right, so Diggs was kind of on a pitch count last week. He should be a little further along to where maybe that pitch count either expands or is lifted altogether. But in the slot, unless something changes, I anticipate it's going to be Reddy Stewart who is going to fill in for Bland in the slot. Okay, now Reddy Stewart is a player that Matt Eberflus had in Chicago. He was an undrafted free agent. The Chicago Bears signed him last year, so he's familiar with Eberflus's defense. Now, this past summer, I believe Reddy Stewart was with the Vikings, so he came over to the Cowboys after training camp cuts were made, and even though he knows the system, it's still a matter of kind of getting used to the players around him. So Stewart is also a guy who's had limited snaps on defense at the NFL level. So you have basically a green or wet behind the ears slot cornerback going up against the Giants. Again, unless something changes. All right, so here's where I think it can benefit the Giants. Right, besides the fact that this is a inexperienced young man, and not to take anything away from him, he could potentially have a big game. You never know. But what I would do is I would put Malik Neighbors in the slot, and I would move Wan'Dale Robinson outside. All right, I went back and I took a look at what Malik Neighbors has done in the slot versus outside. In 2024, Malik Neighbors in the slot had a 73.9% catch rate, that per True Media, for 252 yards, 7.4 yards per catch, 2 touchdowns. All right, so not too bad. Not too bad at all. Malik Neighbors, the Giants don't really use him a whole lot in the slot because they have Wan'Dale Robinson. I think in this particular case, if you want a matchup that is so lopsided that there's absolutely little chance that the Giants are going to lose it, if it's going to be Reddy Stewart, you put Malik Neighbors in the slot a lot more than maybe what you normally would do over the course of a game. Now, another thing I would consider doing if I'm the Giants is I would run screens, wide receiver screens. So again, let's take a look here. Malik Neighbors, 15 of 19 for 89 yards, 136 yards after the catch last year on wide receiver screens. Wan'Dale Robinson, 15 of 16 for 53 yards, 98 yards after the catch. So the Giants receivers, those two guys, very productive on screens, right? So just run them right at Reddy Stewart. All right, now, the other advantage the Giants have is they could potentially mix and match. They don't have to say, okay, you know what? We've got this inexperienced guy that we're facing at slot cornerback, so we're going to just put Malik in there the whole game. We're going to put Wan'Dale there. They can now take advantage of the chess game. They can mix and match different guys in the slot, and that will hopefully open things up a little bit more and give them some more options in the passing game. All right, Another thing that I anticipate the Giants will do, use motion. So let's take a look. Last week, according to NFL Plus, the Giants ran 32 out of their 62 plays on offense, 20 passing plays, 12 rushing plays using motion. They gained 52 out of their 74 rushing yards using motion and 79 of their 168 passing yards using motion. So what does motion do? A, it can confuse the defense, but more importantly, it's going to give quarterback Russell Wilson an opportunity to figure out what kind of coverage he might be facing. And as I said before in the previous segment, he'll probably see a lot of zone coverage. But this will also maybe give him a better idea as to where to go with the ball. So those are the elements that I think the Giants might consider doing for this game. Obviously, we don't see the practices anymore, the full practices that the Giants run. They kick us out after, I think, like the first 15, 20 minutes when they start the team drill stuff. But these three things, to me, make a whole lot of sense. Now, I don't know, again, if that's what they're going to do, but having studied it, I think that could be the formula that they need, because this Giants passing game last week was not very good. And you're going to say, well, doesn't it all start with the offensive line? Yes, it does. But the benefit, I think, especially if you're targeting more guys on shorter routes, is you can get the ball out of Russell Wilson's hand a lot quicker. So if that offensive line struggles, get the ball out of his hand faster. If it means throwing shorter passes and letting the receivers pick up yards after the catch, that's what you got to do. You need to get that passing game going. And the Giants just haven't done a good job of that so far in the one game that they have played. So we'll see if that's what's on tap for Sunday from the offense. And if it's not, then I don't know what to tell you, because I just think it makes too much sense to not go that route. All right, Giant fans, coming up next, the Giants placed inside linebacker Micah McFadden on injured reserve with that foot injury. He's probably going to miss the rest of the season. Hopefully he'll be back, but I can't see it happening. So what did the Giants do to replace him? We'll talk more about that right after this. Hey, Giant fans, Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anybody else as of August 2025. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from the smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to Locked On Giants. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. Big game for the Giants. You know, they're all must wins, but this weekend in particular, a big time must win for the New York Giants. They cannot go 0-2. I mean, we're talking, if they go 0-2, 2 losses to divisional rivals, which is not going to be good for what they ultimately want to achieve. It is also probably not going to appease team ownership. So Giants got to come up with a win. And they have struggled to win down in Dallas basically since 2016, which you'd have to go back to the Eli Manning era. So it's been a while for sure. All right, so in this segment, the Giants are going to be without Micah McFadden on defense. So how are they going to replace him? Now, I think there's going to be 2 approaches to this. And I think one of the approaches is going to solve a dilemma that I think Shane Bowen, the defensive coordinator, had last week. And that is, how do I get all 3 of my pass rushers on the field? And of course, I'm talking about Brian Burns, I'm talking about Kayvon Thibodeau, and I'm talking about Abdul Carter. The 3 of them only playing 8 snaps together, which is just not enough. So here's what they potentially will do. And Shane Bowen talked a little bit about this, but I want to, go into a little bit more detail here. I think we're going to see Abdul Carter a little bit more at inside linebacker. Now, is that his best position? That depends, right? He did it very well at Penn State, right? In Penn State, he did coverage. He was effective in coverage, had a 75.1 coverage grade. He was good against the run. Okay, so he could do it. And by the way, there's no rule that says you can't rush the passer if you're an inside linebacker. We've seen Micah McFadden do it. We've seen other inside linebackers do it. So there's no rule that says you have to line up on the edge if you want to rush the passer. So I could see a scenario where Abdul Carter potentially lines up at inside linebacker on first downs for sure. And then depending on the distance for second and third down, maybe then they move him back to the edge. Maybe they leave him there. But I think they're going to tap into his versatility as a way to get him on the field. And again, you can have him blitz. No rule says you can't. Now, in the obvious passing downs, for example, if the Giants get third and long, I think perhaps they could use Dane Belton, safety, as sort of a hybrid safety / linebacker, which would allow them to potentially move Abdul Carter to the edge. And maybe, who knows, maybe they flip Burns inside. And now you have a pass rushing attack of Burns, Thibodeau, Carter, and of course, Dexter Lawrence up front. So Shane Bowen has some options here. And I just think we're going to see a lot of Abdul Carter at inside linebacker. I'm going to be curious to see what the final snap count is and the position pivot breakdown is. So I will, see if I can't have that for you. Probably I'll get that for you Monday because that information isn't readily available right after the game when I do the post-game analysis. But let me just give you a couple of numbers here with Abdul Carter. For those of you who are wondering, is dropping him back in the coverage such a good idea? So in 2024 for Penn State, Abdul Carter was in man coverage, 8.4% of the time, had a 75.1 coverage grade from Pro Football Focus. Didn't have any targets, though, thrown his way. In zone coverage, he was there 66.1% of the time, had a 79.0 coverage grade, forced 2 incompletions, and had 2 pass breakups. So Carter can drop back into coverage. Absolutely. All right. So again, it's not a role you want to see him do every single play. You want him at some point to start hunting, going forward instead of going backwards. But if he has to play inside linebacker, and it does look like he's going to, or at least it sounds like, based on what I was able to gather from when Shane Bowen spoke, that stands to be a real possibility. Now, will it work out? That I don't know. I would think it would, but, just when I think Shane Bowen has it figured out, something kind of goes astray. The Giants can't afford to have anything go astray, obviously, this weekend for reasons that I spoke of. An 0-2 start against 2 division rivals, not good. So that's what I think the Giants are going to do at inside linebacker to replace Micah McFadden. Now, one last thing I'm going to leave you with that nobody's really talking about, but I'm going to mention it anyway because I think this is going to be another key to the game. Dallas's special teams are pretty good. Brandon Aubrey, their kicker, really good. Their return specialists, Cavante Turpin, really good. The Giants' special teams units, especially their coverage units, I wouldn't say really good. I'd say okay. So those special teams units better be on their mark. Now, interestingly, for those who haven't heard, the Giants picked up Xavier Gipson off waivers from the Jets. Xavier Gipson is probably going to be the kickoff returner, replacing Wan'Dale Robinson, who did it last week. All right. I think Gunnar Olszewski is going to stay at the punt returner, but we're going to see Xavier Gipson as the kickoff returner. The Gibson has speed and he's been productive as a kickoff returner. The one thing that concerns me with his game, he's had some fumble issues. And I'm not just talking about last week against the Jets when he put the ball on the ground on a kickoff and cost the Jets basically the game because the Steelers were able to convert his gaff, which he committed, I think, at their 22-yard line. They were able to convert that into a score. This has been kind of a career issue for Gibson. So hopefully that is not a problem because it would be nice to see some stress-free returns and some productive returns. And really, Wan'Dale Robinson gave it a go, but I don't think he averaged more than 20.5 yards per return, which is not really what you want. You want to do at least 25 ideally. So, fingers crossed that they have that figured out. But it is worth noting that the special teams, especially when the Giants face Dallas, because Dallas, like I said, they always seem to have really good special teams. And the Giants haven't always been good in that area in terms of flipping the field and getting ideal starting field position, which for a struggling offense, they better figure out a way to come up with. They need that unit, that part of the game to really step up for them in a big way. So that is something that remains to be seen. Fingers crossed, because I don't know about you, but I don't want to see another ugly game. I don't want to have to get on after, the game on Sunday and talk about a loss. I would like to see the Giants finally snap the losing streak down in Dallas, handle the Cowboys, handle business, come back to New Jersey. And then next week, of course, they will face the Kansas City Chiefs, one of the two Super Bowl teams from last year, and have some momentum going into that game rather than maybe potentially be deflated if they were to lose to Dallas. So that is my hope. Plus, I really want to see you guys happy because this losing can't be easy for you. I know it's not for me. I can just imagine what it is for those of you who spend your time watching this team because you want to. All right, Giant fans, that will do it for this edition of the Locked On Giants podcast. Before we say goodbye, I want to thank you for making Locked On Giants part of your day, or if you made us your first listen of the day, we appreciate that as well. The NFL season is finally here. For your next listen, get a double dose of the Locked On NFL podcast. Tyler, the Madman Rowland, gives you a shot of espresso to start your football day, while Tony Wiggins takes you into the barbershop for the smoothest breakdowns to end the day. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, Giant fans, I'll see you again probably on Sunday night. Have a great weekend and go Giants.